California schools and universities may lose federal funding. President Trump signed an executive order to bar transgender athletes from participating in women and girls sports. California state, a lot of universities and schools are not following this, and the state leaders mainly are divided on the issue. Democrats, they think this is unfair to transgender athletes, while Republicans don't agree with them. And Governor Newsom might have changed his position on this issue on his new podcast. My guest today is Aaron Friday, who's an activist and a parent who has been actively watching what's happening with the transgender issues in California. She has her own personal story and why she got involved in this issue. She's been in touch with the federal government and working with the state leaders. She's here to tell us what's going on.
Hi parents, Deacon John Wilson here. We're going to see the video, or most of the video, or a lot of the video. I want to react to it, of her discussion. I won't be able to do the entire one. It's 39 minutes. I'll probably get into a copyright issue, but if I do too much. But I wanted you to see this. I'll include the link to it below. This is a very eye-opening interview that she's having here. And, I want even my evangelical Christian parents to think only about their youth, because that's our responsibility and what's best for them. And those of you who have female athletes, what's best for them. And as you look into this issue prayerfully, I don't know, you can look at it logically. It doesn't have to be because, you're a Christian evangelical parent at all. And I didn't say black because it doesn't matter whether if you're Christian evangelical, what race you are. Now, on the other hand, this is one of those issues where you might just close your mind to it, because it's Trump. If you just, dislike him, hate him, whatever, or afraid of him, whatever you want to put there, then you're willing to not talk about the transgender issue. Now, mind you, it's not the fact that they're transgender. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I might have an opinion about whether it's right or wrong, but it's not about that. And anybody who's a believer that says, and supposes that that's the issue, they're wrong. It's two things. You'll hear it today. It's maybe three, the males competing in female athletics, as a specific issue. If they're transgender, their bones and their strength is still a male, and they're tall, big guys, and they're going into female locker rooms. As you'll hear later, it's legal in the state of California. And it proposes an interesting dilemma that I'll talk about later. Remember, it's not just the issue that they're transgender. Like, for example, I have an issue with children under the age of 18 getting parts cut off, taking chemicals. And that can happen in the state of California as of July 1st without your consent, parents. The school can start the process. And while I'm on that subject, the school doesn't have to tell you if the student has voiced an interest in becoming the opposite gender. And children are under so much pressure in social media, especially females, about gender and identity. I see it on TikTok all the time, when I look over there. And there's a lot of pressure on youth. But anyway, let's take a listen to the video, and I'll have a few reactions to the early parts of the video. But I do encourage you to listen to the entire video. Give me a comment at the bottom. Every parent that has a student in K through 12 and even in college should take a look at this. And think about this issue as it relates to your son or daughter. Are we speaking to our kids enough at home about when strangers approach them about their gender? Are we even talking about this? These kind of issues are raised, I believe, later in this interview. And were I you, I would listen to the interview. I'll react to a few parts of it in just a moment.
Telling kids who like the opposite sex toys that they're that opposite sex. I would have been transitioned as a child. I was a total tomboy, and I would have been asked relentlessly, like these kids are, so are you trans? Do you think you're really a trans boy? Because that's what's happening at our schools.
I'm Siama Kurami. Welcome to California Insider. Erin, it's great to have you on back. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
In terms of what you have been working on, parents in California concerned about kids going to school and maybe potentially changing genders in school and not getting notified. There has been a major shift politically in the country, and the new president, President Trump, is coming up with some executive orders that could impact California and the way the state has been dealing with these issues. Can you tell us what's happening?
Well, thank goodness for Donald Trump being in office now, and I say that as a lifelong Democrat, so it's kind of odd for those words to come out. But right.
See, right there, she's a lifelong Democrat. Yeah. And on this issue, parents, she's being honest. We have to be honest with ourselves about this. And notice that, the executive orders were issued, and I want you to hear the legal issues that she talks about next, because there's an important legal issue, and I think an interesting constitutional issue. And I think originalists in the court will probably strike against California, because an originalist would think that there wasn't a transgender issue when the Constitution was signed, and that they would say that you need an amendment to the Constitution to define what gender is. Gender has always been male or female. But listen to this lady. She's a lifelong Democrat, and who knows, she may have other issues. She's in total agreement with Democrats on them. But when it comes to her children, or children in general, I think she has this is Aaron Friday, I think she has a different opinion.
Right out of the gate, he signed a myriad of executive orders that there's one that defines sex, female and male, which I never thought that we would need to have that definition in law, because it's just known what a female and male is. He signed an executive order to get males out of females' sports. And then he signed an executive order to get these gender clinics to stop the barbaric practice of cutting off children's body parts and pumping them with experimental drugs, pulling federal funding from them. And so he has done more to protect families, women, and children within the first 30 days of an administration that's ever. So it's pretty historic. And your listeners need to understand that the reason why Donald Trump won all of the swing states was because of the transgender issue.
I don't want to get too political, but when I talk to people about the election, they don't say that at all. But I think when people were questioned when they left the polling places in the swing states, they said it was a major issue. That and the immigration. But of course, this is an education channel, so we got to deal with the transgender issue because it is affecting education right now, the policy toward how we do transgender policy. So I think that's a pretty important point that's being made there.
This appeals to Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike. The vast majority of Americans are against this transgender movement.
Now, that's about 75 to 80%. So we can all agree on that. And that's one of those 80-20 issues they talk about, that nobody is leading on that in that party. Now, Republicans have their problems too, as I've talked to you all about earlier, about extremes in the area of how we enforce DEI policies. They haven't been clear about that, but for sure, this one right here clearly is an 80-20 issue, and I think that politically you could be on the wrong side of it if you're supporting something that 20% of Americans agree with. Let's continue.
As a whole.
California is going to fight this, right? Is that how it's going to go? Certain states are not following this executive order, and they're trying to fight it, right?
Right.
That's correct. So California is digging its heels in and saying that it's not going to follow these executive orders. Some of the hospitals started to follow the executive order after 3 days, and then the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, wrote a press release saying that all these hospitals need to continue to do these so-called sex changes on children. And so
you see there, the hospitals are deciding, well, we better stop doing this. And then they're being told by the state of California, through the Attorney General, no less, they need to continue doing that. So you have a state policy versus a federal policy. More on that right now.
they have resumed. We have Gavin Newsom now waffling on this issue because he understands what's at stake for the public schools if they do not follow Trump's executive orders as far as getting males out of female sports and spaces. So he's on the fence on this, as we saw with his interview with Charlie Kirk. He said males being in female sports is unfair. So he's kind of playing both sides, waiting to see what happens. But schools right now, they don't know what to do. I have lots of conversations with school board members because we have law in California that says you must follow state and federal law for funding. State law in California places gender identity above sex. So it says a student, if they identify as a certain gender, then they can participate in a sport as that, in that sex category. Or they can go into, a male can go into the girls' bathroom, shower room, etc., as long as he says that he identifies as a female. So that's our state law. That's codified.
That's California law.
That is California law. Then we have federal law, which incidentally trumps.
The executive order changed it, right? It's kind of...
Well, the executive...
Or was it there before?
Two things. So the executive order made it very clear that the federal government will withhold dollars from any, educational institution that is violating Title IX.
I don't know where she's going next, but what should come next is, and I'll tell you now in case it doesn't, is that in Title IX, it says gender, meaning male or female. And of course, the angle here is in state law, a person could say they're a female and now they're female gender and they would comply with Title IX. Again, that's going to boil down to, it's going to go to Supreme Court, I'm telling you. Because I think if California digs in, a year or two from now, we'll go to the courts and it'll come up at a time where we're in the midterm elections, unfortunately, which is why some states are saying we'll just comply, even states that are Democrat or blue. So this is an interesting constitutional issue. Title IX says gender. So I think they meant male or female biologically. It didn't say that. So that's the loophole that I think is being used. Let's see what she says.
There was a court case filed in Kentucky recently, and the ruling came out in January of this year that said Biden's Title IX changes are vacated. So they are unconstitutional, and we need to go back to Title IX as it was written in 2020, which is based on sex. Biden changed Title IX to say gender identity is the same as sex, which it's not. So the court said no.
So there it is. See, gender identity, sex, gender. There we go. The courts have bounced it in Kentucky. But I wonder why that district court didn't apply to the whole country. But I don't want to go there. It's not a constitutional thing. I think it's a state to state decisioning until the court rules. Let's continue.
So a lower court said no. And then Trump came in with his executive order and said, any school that is allowing males to participate as females will not get federal dollars. And we're seeing this play out now. Trump isn't kidding around with this. This has never happened in U.S. history. There's never been federal dollars withheld from schools for violating Title IX. But Trump's doing it. Yesterday, the University of Pennsylvania had $175 million now frozen from the federal government because Leah Thomas was participating as a female in swimming.
And they would not change their definition in time. So 10 days were given, so the government froze $175 million.
On Monday, 5 days ago,
Right.
the federal government just ruled, the HHS, the Department of Ed, just told Maine, you are in violation of Title IX. You have 10 days to remedy it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And if they don't remedy it, Maine is going to lose their federal dollars. And these federal dollars mean something, especially here in California.
Tell us about Title IX.
Title IX was enacted in 1972. It is 37 words long. That's it. And it says that any educational institution that is getting federal dollars that discriminates based on sex will not get that funding. So it's basically a contract. So if the school wants federal dollars, it cannot discriminate on sex so that women could get the same education as males. So women could have the same rights to sports as males. And that was by design. It was based on sex. Biden then came in and actually really, President Obama started it, came in and said, gender identity is the same as sex. And so you can't discriminate based on gender identity. Sex and gender identity, they cannot coexist. One has to be higher than the other. There has to be a hierarchy. And of course, sex is immutable. No human has ever changed sex. Gender identity is an internal belief that contradicts the exterior body. And so Biden was trying to get gender identity to be higher than sex. And the courts have thus far said no. And that will continue. This is ultimately going to go to the Supreme Court because it's just unfair. And it goes against the purpose of Title IX.
So that's going to be the whole deal. What will the Supreme Court say? And usually you can't really tell, but you might be able to tell how the vote will go. You have right now 5 originalists on the court and 1 constitutional conservative. So I'm sure on a reading of the Constitution and the context of Title IX, I think they will conclude that that's not what people had in mind in 1972 even. That there be this difference between gender identity and sex. I hope you're following that conversation. And there might be something else we know about the justice. Maybe you remember this.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out
So that's an example of what one of the justices thinks. So maybe you got at least one that's willing to consider the possibility that the definition of a woman is not as simple as we think it is, not biological. So when you know that's kind of a position that's on the court, you may have one or two that feel that way. But I don't see even Justice Sotomayor ruling that way. She might, you know, Justice Kagan, she might, you know, but there's 6 other judges. So what's going to probably happen is that California will dig in on this issue. And I'm thinking about the CIF right now. CIF first said they would do it, then changed and said, oh, I don't know, we got to follow state law. So they're toeing the line. They're staying with the state law when that attorney general put out that. And then as far as colleges goes, NCAA said, no, we agree, you know, no transgender, trans women playing with women. They said that, but then you got individual schools in these states that are going to hold out. And I don't think California is the only state. I think Oregon, Washington, Illinois, I mean, they're all holdouts. I think New York hasn't decided yet about their compliance with the executive order. So we'll just have to wait and see. All right, sorry, this video has gotten a little long. Remember, I included the entire video down below. You should watch it. It's about 35 minutes. I showed about 10 of it. It's a very interesting video. Parents need to stay up to date on these things because in your classrooms, that's the other thing I didn't mention. They're covering this trans stuff and teaching your children without asking you first. They're using a state law to do that. And I think it's important for those of you in public and private schools, I think, to stay up on this stuff. So look at the video. Remember to click like and subscribe if you want to get videos with information like this. Also, remember to leave a comment for me so I can see you're benefiting from this. God bless you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.